Hello and welcome to our extended disc webinar today. It's a long title, but it will be worth your while. It's called Sales Competence Assessment, Sales Competencies, Sales Mindset, and Sales Excuse Index. My name is Christina Bowser. I'm the training director here at Extended Disc, and my guest today is Markku Kauppanen, president of Extended Disc. Welcome.
Thank you, Christina. How are you doing?
Good. You sound a little scratchy.
Yeah, I'm getting over a cold, so I'm drinking my hot tea, and hopefully my voice will hold up for this 30-minute webinar.
You should see him. He's got his hot tea, he's got his cough drops, he's got his napkins, he's got his water. He's ready for this.
Quite a visual right there.
It is. All right, so let's talk about the Sales Competence Assessment. And for me and Markku, we'll probably start to call it the SCA after a little while. It's a long term, but it's been a little while now.
Yeah, we introduced this a couple of years ago, and kind of start right. It's not based on DISC theory. When we launched the FinxS platform for our assessments a couple of years ago as well, it allows us to create new kind of assessment, not only tailor and customize the DISC assessments to make sure the reports are really what our clients are looking for in terms of content, tailored them for job roles, industry, etc. But it also allows to create assessment tools that have nothing to do with DISC. And SCA is the first one of these assessments that we have created. And it really has been exciting to see how well and quickly it's taken off with clients who obviously do sales training, sales coaching, people who really want to develop their salespeople. And I think the sales managers, VPs of sales have been really the primary audience for us. They are the ones who are most interested in this product and have made it so successful.
Yeah, and for many of you out there, stuttering this morning, who got caught on the word sales and thinking, oh, what new DISC assessment do we have? Just as Markku said, this is not a DISC-based assessment. So Markku, can you give people an overview of what the Sales Competence Assessment really is?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the purpose is very simple and very focused, and it's simply to help our clients to improve their sales success. And when we created this assessment, we wanted to make it very easy to use. While our clients tell us that DISC assessments are quite easy, their participants understand the model very quickly, and more importantly, put it into use. They begin to think about who they are. They learn to identify the styles of others and modify their behavior, which is really what we are ultimately trying to achieve. While it's easy, I think this is even easier.
I agree.
Yeah, because we wanted to make sure that when people start using this, they are not focusing on how do I learn to interpret this. Instead, they can focus on how do I put this information to use. So as like with extended DISC assessments, we have trained a trainer or certification training. With this product, you really don't need it. I've seen that the people learn this in about 30 minutes. They understand how to use it. Of course, they may have some questions down the road, but they really can learn it very quickly. And what it does, it really measures a salesperson's competency level, their strengths and weaknesses in 18 very important sales areas. And I'll share those in a moment. And it also allows us to measure progress, because unlike with our DISC assessment that measures that hardwired DISC style that remains quite stable over our adult lifetime, this actually measures where the salesperson is right now in terms of their competencies in these 18 areas. So they can take it over later down the road and really see how they've developed in the areas that they really try to improve upon. Again, it's not based on DISC, so it has a different questionnaire. We'll talk about that in a moment. But it also allows us to clearly connect to our DISC assessments. We have a tool called, and it's called Sales 18, and we did a webinar about that.
We did, and that's recorded, so you guys can go back and refer to it.
So that's based on DISC, and Sales 18 ties directly to Sales Competency Assessment. While they can be used independently, really ideally our clients use them together to really have a clear understanding how best develop a salesperson.
So Markku, let's talk about how the process of generating Sales Competence Assessment goes.
It's similar in a sense that if you think about our DISC assessments, people go to our questionnaire website and they have the access code. Same thing happens with this, but the questionnaire is going to be different. The access code will take the respondent to a different questionnaire that has 99 questions. And on average, it takes about 25 minutes to complete. And it's really designed for salespeople. If somebody has not had any sales experience, they might have some difficulty completing the questionnaire. But as long as this person has been in sales, I would say about 3 months, they will have no trouble completing the questionnaire.
So just the same as, the sending your clients to take the extended DISC assessment is the FinxS.com website is the same for individuals to take this SCA.
Yeah, it's exactly same thing, and only difference is that they have a different access code that will tell our system that this is a sales competency assessment. Now, one thing, since it's sales assessment, it assumes that the person is currently selling.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody takes this and they maybe sold in the past, let's say they were sales professional, now they're sales manager. If they're more in a manager role right now, the results would reflect that because they are not currently selling. So we actually measuring how good the salesperson is right now in these 18 sales competency areas.
So they go to the website, they enter in their access code, then?
Well, same thing with the DISC. They get the instructions and tell them that, hey, you need have about 30 minutes to complete it, and they will say, I'll do it now. And then they simply fill out their name, organization, all the other information that we typically complete in the DISC questionnaire as well. And then they select the language in which they want to complete the questionnaire. This list is already outdated. We have a lot of languages, but it is important that the person, just like with DISC, completes it in their native language. It's important to always note that. And then they get those 99 questions, and they look like this. This is one example. We'll have two statements, and the salesperson is simply asked to select which one of these two describes them the better.
And there are 99 of these statements. So once they do that, you had earlier, we talked, you just gave an intro to those 18 sales competence assessments. So Markku, let's show them what those 18 are.
Yes, and one thing I want to mention and make it very clear is that when we designed this assessment, we wanted to make like I said, very easy to use. So everything is clearly defined in the assessment results. You don't have to look into other support materials or reference materials. Everything is in the report. So when we look at these 18 competencies, you can clearly see that they very directly are critical for somebody's sales success. Now, for example, if I look at the first one, prospecting, it might be more important for somebody who's early in their sales role when they don't really have existing client base. Prospecting may become a little bit less important down the road when they get a lot of referrals and are able to maybe cultivate the existing client base for additional business. So we always have to look into how important is it right now. But it's, like I mentioned, everything is defined in the report. So when we look at these 18 competencies like prospecting, it's clearly defined in the report what we mean by prospecting. So
like if I have a definition of prospecting and maybe you have a different definition of prospecting, we go with the one in the report. Exactly, because that is what is designed to measure. Now, we work with a lot of sales professionals in developing this report and sales trainers and consultants. So we work very closely with people who are in sales. This is not our definition. We wanted to go outside and look for sales organization. What's important to you, and what's the definition for prospecting? So we work very carefully in making sure that these competencies are important for sales success, and we are measuring these competencies in a way that it's important for salespeople to understand, like what is successful prospecting actually looks like. And some of you might wonder, well, why 18? And as someone of Chinese background, I told Markku, I love the number 18. It's obviously prioritized and that's what they arrive to. But the number 18, if you're a sales professional, it's a great number to have, because for us Chinese people means that prosperity is assured. That's what the number 18 sounds like. Yep. I didn't even know that. Yep. But we looked at many different competencies, but ultimately we had to narrow it to a manageable number, because if you have, let's say, 30 competencies, the questionnaire becomes quite lengthy and fatigue tends to set in. And we did get a lot of valuable input from outside organizations that these are the ones that we really want to understand. Awesome. So let's show them now what it actually looks like in the report itself. Yeah, and if anybody wants a sample report, we can certainly email that to you. But here in the report, the first section we have is what's called the executive summary. And it's simply on a 0 to 100 point scale provides what is the current competency level for a salesperson. So for example, for prospecting, this person gets 57%. Not a terrible score, but it's not something you want to celebrate either if this is important for the person's sales success right now. But as you can see, it's really, really easy to interpret.
Everybody understands what the 0 to 100% means. Higher the score, higher the competency. So here we can very quickly understand what are the strengths and development areas for this particular salesperson.
Yeah, so people really like this executive summary. You just get a good overall picture, and then, as you read into the report itself, it starts to break it down. So let's show them that.
In the next section, we provide the individual scores, where we want to make sure that all the users understand what do we mean by a low score or high score. So this person gets only 38% on prospecting. So this individual leans more to the left, where we're looking at somebody we call a farmer, somebody who's really looking to cultivate the existing client base and try to develop business from there, rather than being what we call a hunter, somebody who's looking always for new sales opportunities. So if you need somebody who's a hunter, who's looking for new business opportunities, obviously you would like to get a higher score here.
Right, and what's so great about it is it not only gives you the score, but as Marku showed you, between the farmer and the hunter, it defines what a low score means and what a high score means.
Well, we want to make sure it's very clear that people don't begin to use their own definitions, whether it's a sales manager or a sales trainer or the salesperson. It needs to be very clear what a high score and low score means, in addition to how the actual competencies defined.
And what I've heard great feedback on the report is not only does it focus on these 18 competencies, but it looks even deeper into them, and we call them your mindsets. So let's talk about what mindsets are.
Yeah, mindsets are they're really the building blocks of the competencies. So we measure two things, actually three things, but when we look at the competencies, we want to first measure the underlying sales mindsets. And really what the mindsets are, they are kind of belief systems that we have, value system that we have. And ideally, we really use them to identify self-defeating beliefs. And all of us have those. And unfortunately, a lot of times we are not aware of those self-defeating beliefs. If you think about DISC, that looks at the hardwired behavioral style. Sales competency assessment essentially looks what's going through between our ears, what are our belief systems and how we think we can succeed in sales and how good we think we are in selling. So when we look at these mindsets, it allows us to really go deeper to understand what are the roadblocks to success in these 18 competencies. So if you go to the section that we call a mindset summary table, and by the way, I'll zoom in a moment so we can see more clearly. We have these 12 sales mindsets that are also defined clearly in the report that make up the competency scores. So if we want to develop a salesperson, which typically is the case, it allows us to really understand where do we need to start. So if you focus on let's say the qualifying section, if you go there, here we have the scores for prospecting. This person only gets 10%, so we will look at the mindsets, but I'm going to focus on the qualifying because we can very quickly see here how it works. Qualifying score, and again, we would have to look at the definition so we understand what we mean by that. We get a score of 67%. Pretty good score, but if we want to develop that, we want to know where we want to start. And if we look at the underlying mindset, we notice that the hunter mindset is only 18%. And the way the hunter mindset is defined, it is reaching the full potential by wanting to have everything right now. So what this would tell me that this salesperson, for whatever reason, has the kind of a belief system that all good things take some time. They lack that sense of urgency. And I would like to really understand why that is the case. A lot of times we have these recorders going in our minds when we are young children. Our parents tell us things, don't talk to strangers, and It's not polite to talk about money, on and on. We have these kind of things that directly relate to our sales success, and these mindsets are still something that we carry around and we need to overcome if we want to become more successful. So this would give me very clear indication, where do I need to start in developing this salesperson's qualifying competency.
Yeah, and our clients have said this is such a powerful piece of the SCA, is not only just to understand that, hey, I want to focus on qualifying, but you're really going deeper down and looking specifically at in this, we call them mindsets, the mindsets that might be holding you back. So you're not wasting a lot of time. Now, go ahead.
ideally, a client would also use the Sales 18, which is based on this. So if I wanted to really develop qualifying, and I'm not going to talk to Sales 18 too much, but because we have a webinar that's already recorded, but then I could look at the qualifying score from the Sales 18 that is based on the individual's hardwired behavioral style. When I have that score, I not only would know how the person is hardwired for sales success, but now I could also look at their competency level and what kind of self-defeating beliefs they have. So for example, let's assume for a moment that the Sales 18, the DISC score for qualifying is high. So that would tell me that this person should be very comfortable with qualifying. This score of 67% on a SCA would tell, hey, it should be pretty good, but they could be even better if we worked on this self-defeating belief that all good things take time. Now I can be very specific, kind of laser focus in my development efforts rather than trying to figure out different things and hope it works. So it makes a very clear development plan for all sales professionals.
So again, just to reiterate, the SCA, which you're talking about today, is a standalone tool, as is the Sales 18, which is the DISC base. However, they can be very powerful paired up together. Exactly.
Like a doctor typically doesn't make decisions based on just one tool, one diagnostic tool. Typically they get information, so you have more of a kind of a 360 view what's happening with the person. Same thing applies here. Now, SCA would tell you a lot, but if you do also Sales 18, you would even have more information.
Exactly. So, now that we've helped the individual identify areas where they are competent and areas where they need further development, let's talk about that development plan, which is also built into the report itself.
That's right, because again, remember we wanted to create something that's easy to use. So just having these scores, while helpful, sometimes people want a little bit of a hand holding. Hey, how do I actually go and develop? How do I create that plan to help the salesperson to become more successful? And there are 6 different scenarios that we can look at that are based on the competency and mindset scores. And they're listed right there. But ideally, and actually that's the wrong word, really what it does is it allows us to prioritize our development plan. What are the things we want to work on first that we get the greatest return on our investment of time? So for example, there's something like forget at the moment. If one of the competencies is that, you may truly want to forget it at the moment because developing that area would simply take so much work that everybody might get a little frustrated. Manager gets frustrated because it seems the salesperson is not really improving. Salesperson is going to get frustrated because I'm putting in this all work, but I don't see any results. So you're kind of going for the lowest hanging fruit by using these 6 different paths to create a sales success.
And again, these are all resources that are available to you, this mindset reading guide for you to work with your clients.
Yeah, we're not going to go into details here, but you basically just look at the competency scores and mindset scores and the 6 different scenarios, and then you decide what are the areas I'm going to work on first.
Okay, so now we have identified those areas, and in the report itself, how it shows up is it provides a development plan.
That's right. And if people look at numbers only, it's helpful, but sometimes they need it to be spelled out a little bit more clearly. And in the section we call development plan, we have 1 page for each of the 18 competencies. And first we again define what the competency really is. Here we look at prospecting. There's the definition very clearly. This is what we are measuring. Then we remind the salesperson again, what is their score, and remind them again, what does a low score and high score actually mean? But then more importantly, we actually describe what the current competency in this area looks like in practice. So this is how this person is prospecting right now. It spells it out very clearly, and it's based on their score, 38%. And then we also provide ideas how we can actually improve in this area of prospecting. They're very specific, and they are based on their score. So if somebody gets that score of 67%, obviously their suggestions would be different.
So you can see how efficient and effective it is. I mean, not only does it create a page for each of the 18 competences, but you literally can pull out the page that you want to work with your client on, which is great.
Yeah, because you have 18 competencies, and let's say I take this and I get, kind of average scores all the way around. Maybe I'm not the greatest salesperson, but I want to be better. Well, I look at the 18 scores, I can't work on 18 areas right away. So I really want to prioritize what I believe, and hopefully my sales manager, maybe my sales coach is there to help me to prioritize what those competencies are that I want to develop first. Then I can look at those sales mindsets, understand what are those self-defeating beliefs, but then I can look over here and actually understand how do I presently prospect and what are the specific things I can do to improve. So it becomes very clear. There's no guessing on what that score might actually mean in practice. We wanted to make the roadmap to success very, very clear.
I was just going to use the word roadmap because it's such a great description the way you're describing it. So you're starting from not just point zero. You're given these options. You're given kind of a set path that, or not a set path, but optional paths that you can take.
Yeah, because in all my career, I've dealt with salespeople, both from outside, providing their assessment results, but also inside working with our salespeople here and in my past career. Sales is a tough job, and it's kind of a thankless job. Nobody's really like, if my son becomes a salesperson, it's not something I'm going, listen, my son, what a career, he's going to be a salesperson. It's such a low respect for such an important role in an organization. Without sales, there's no organization. They just don't survive. But it's a very tough job, and working with salespeople, they really want the information very quickly. Typically, they don't want to spend time trying to figure out how to interpret the results for me to become more successful. When you spell it out, you make it clear, they will use it. And that was the idea behind SCA.
Exactly. So another part of the report that we have gotten great feedback, especially from sales coaches, are the question section.
Yeah, I think what the people like about the questions is that these question sizes are not boilerplate questions. These questions will be different based on the individual scores. So, for example, on the prospecting, those 3 questions are based on the salesperson score of 38%. Again, if I got 75% on this area, my questions would be different. And the way I've seen our clients use this a couple of different ways. Salespeople sometimes use this on their own as ideas. What do I need to really think about? Maybe I create my plan for success. What are my daily behavioral goals? And they can use those questions to help develop that. Other way I've seen as a sales manager or sales coach, they actually keep these questions to themselves, and it helps them prepare for those coaching sessions. These questions will be very relevant to the salesperson, and in fact, sometimes you can really make yourself look very good when you ask these questions, because the salesperson will think, wow, how did he know to ask that question? So they can be used in different ways, but again, the key point here is that they are based on the scores, so they are most relevant to improve success.
And what's great about it, Markku, I think you said earlier on is, it measures your current competence, so you can also measure progress. And if your scores change, don't these questions change, and don't the action plan itself change, the development plans?
Great point. The way the assessment works, the kind of fundamental philosophy it has is that success is not a destination. You can always improve. So yes, if the salesperson takes the questionnaire today, they're going to get some competency scores. Hopefully that will prompt them to begin to improve certain areas of selling. Let's say they select prospecting. That's really important for me. I'm going to work on it. Hopefully they have somebody who's going to coach them, train them, and then they begin to develop. So when the person, let's say 6 months later, takes it again, I would expect the prospecting score to go higher. Now, there's a chance some other score could be lower because maybe they are ignoring or overlooking some other important areas. But yes, we would see a different score. And then you're absolutely correct. These questions would be different because there's still room for improvement. However, how we get to the next level is going to be a little bit different. So the questions would change.
And the last part I want Markku to talk about today is sales excuse index. So let's talk about it.
My favorite, because this is the number I always look at first. It simply means how likely salesperson is to make excuses. Now, if you're a sales manager, you're salespeople tend to make a lot of excuses. We don't have the right brochures, our prices are too high, competition is too tough. There's many excuses we can make. So since it is an excuse index, we want this score to be as low as possible. Like for Henry Hunter here, his score is 11%. That's a really good score for excuse index. Because what it means in practice that Henry is going to spend about 90% of his time on activities that are directly related to achieving sales goals. So they're only going to spend about 10% of their time doing some other things. We have to do some other things, paperwork, etc. But this person, Henry, is so focused on selling because that excuse index is only 11%.
So what do we consider like a high, low, average score?
That's a great question. Well, this is how I look at it. I mean, you can look at it sort of globally, or you can look at it for your organization, because different organizations have different caliber salespeople. I can share this. In the US, the average sales excuse index is 35%, meaning that the average salesperson is spending 65% of his or her time selling, 35% of time doing something else. If you're a sales manager, you might be a little disappointed with that number, but that's a fact. I've seen scores as low as 6%. That's the lowest I've seen, and as high as 86%.
Oh boy.
so if you have somebody who's 86%, they're only spending about 15% of their time and effort selling. So
Gotcha.
If you're a sales manager, you will not be very happy with that. But if you are a consultant, it's a great question to ask that, hey, do you know your sales team's sales excuse index? Because all sales managers are worried about that. Are my salespeople really focusing on the right behaviors, right activities to help us become more successful? This number gives you clear, very specific indication where your sales team and your salespeople are.
Exactly. And, I know a lot of you coaches out there have used many different types of sales assessments before, but Markku, can you just talk a little bit about what makes this particular SCA assessment unique and different from others?
Well, I think the unique thing is that, especially when we use it with the Sales 18 that is based on DISC, we get a very holistic picture about where the salesperson is right now with their sales competencies. Because with Sales 18, we can look at actually that behavioral style, hardwired behavioral style, and how conducive it is to success in these 18 competencies. And then we have the sales competency assessment that looks at what's happening between the ears of the salesperson. These tools were designed together at the same time, so they were designed to work together seamlessly. Everything is defined the same way, so it makes it very easy to look at the salesperson from both angles. So you have a very, very clear idea what I need to do in order to develop a salesperson. Frankly, sometimes the answer might be that it may be too much work. Maybe this person is really not wired. They don't have the competencies for sales success. So in the hiring process, we have a hiring report for this as well. You can really begin to make better hiring decisions. And then, of course, you can really have a very clear roadmap, like you said, roadmap to create a plan to improve in selling success. That's
exactly.
Really,
And then I think also, you can, the sales process is a long process, right? I mean, there's some people, their competence is going to be very high in maybe short selling versus long-term relationship selling. So again, you can help identify the strengths of your sales professionals.
Yeah, that's right. It's tailored for different kind of sales roles. So that's a great point. If the sales cycle is very short versus very long, that has a clear, specific impact, what kind of competencies we need. And these tools help to measure that, so we have an idea where we are right now and what do we need to do to improve.
Exactly. And so bravo for Markku for making it through. He didn't cough. So thank you, Markku, for joining us today. I apologize, I didn't say earlier. If you have any questions, feel free to follow up with us after the webinar today or put them in the questions section. If you'd like to learn more about the Sales Competence Assessment, either reach out to us or we have a page devoted to it at our extendeddisc.org website on Sales Competence Assessment. You can see the link here. Also send out a follow-up email with that link in it as well. So thank you guys all for joining us today. It's been recorded. We will put it on our YouTube channel as well as our extendeddisc.org page. We do have another webinar coming up on Wednesday, April 17th. For those of you who want to learn how to present step one of our 4 steps to effective communication, which is what is DISC, and it's approved for 1 HRCI and SHRM recertification unit. To find out more, do you want to tell them?
Yeah, go to extendeddisc.org. That's where all the extended disc action happens. There's events you can sign up for, webinars, And one thing about the webinars, like you mentioned, Christina, we record them all. So even if you can't attend, just sign up and we'll get the link to the recording a little bit later. And if you go to that extended.org/sales competency assessment, I was just informed that there's some special pricing information there as well if you are interested in learning more. And with that, I'm going to go and get a cough drop. And,
and recuperate.
all right. Thanks,
All
Christina.
right. Thanks, everyone.